In today's episode, we're going to have a look at what's inside my sound bag. The sound bag is built on the MixPre-3 Mark II and the Orca OR-27 sound bag. Let's get into it. Okay, so let's have a little look at some of my sound location equipment here. So one of the first microphones I ever had was the Rode NTG2. It's not a bad microphone, but I had it paired up with a Zoom H4n Pro, which not a good pairing up. Actually, a lot of YouTubers probably started with this exact kit setup. But the Rode NTG2 is a very gain-hungry microphone, and the preamps in the Rode H4n Pro not well equipped to handle that, and therefore don't necessarily make a very good match. But it still allows me to have the NTG2 as a secondary microphone and a backup if everything else fails. I still have this H4n Pro, but they don't see a lot of use these days. I'm just going to set those aside. We'll come back to the bag here and the rest of the equipment. We have a Movo Zeppelin or blimp, and of course it comes with the dead wombat covering, so any use outdoors to help knock down any of that rustling from wind when shooting outdoors. For monitoring to the audio, I have a pair of Sennheiser HD25 headset for monitoring, and a very good high quality headset. The design of this has basically been the same as it has been for close to 25 years, and there's a reason for that. It's just very good, and a lot of pros will swear by that particular headset. If I need to shoot straight into the camera with sound, I do have the DMW XLR kit that comes for the GH5, slides right onto the hot shoe, and then sound, of course, directly into the GH5, and it has two XLR inputs and a whole series of controls for controlling how the sound goes into the camera. But that's not really the main point of this video. The main point of this video is the sound bag, and for the sound bag I have, of course, the power adapter that came with it, and I have some old microphones and stick kits for hiding lavaliers underneath of shirts or clothing. And then, of course, there is the battery sled that comes with the MixPre-3, and I just keep that in a little spare bag along with some other spare components. And we only bring that out if we ever have to, but that would be very rare based on the way I have the bag set up. A 25-foot XLR cable, just in case we need to travel any distance with microphones to the sound bag. And then let's get into the bag itself here now. So it's got two little loops, Velcro loops, that allow you to mount your boom pole right on the bag when you're carrying it around, so that's convenient. I'll set that aside. And let's start looking in the bag itself. So from the top, we can see I've got the MixPre-3 along with two Rodelink Filmmaker wireless lavalier kits. Now I'm recording right now on one of these transmitters on channel 2 of the MixPre-3, as we can see here. So I'll have to be careful as I take this apart as we go through the video here. So let's unpack the outside pouch. So this is where I keep the wireless transmitters along with the lavalier microphones that go with those. And it's got the elasticated pockets there for mounting all of that in there, and there's probably room that I could get a third transmitter receiver in there if I really had to. Let's just come over to this other side now, and we'll open that up, and in there is the rain cover that goes with the bag. So if you're out there in inclement weather and you have to shoot in the drizzle, you're somewhat protected. I have a dual USB-A to USB-C cable, and I'll come back to that in a little bit as to why I have that. I have a 18-watt Anchor USB-C power delivery power charger cube. We have a set of Tentacle Sync E timecode generators in here. I'll just set those out. And I also fashioned up a couple of mounts that I can put right on the hot shoe of the camera. So these components are typical components that might come with some magic tension arms. And I just took the base and took off the 1/4 inch. Oops, we'll get that in a minute. I have another one here. I took off the 1/4 inch knob and left the 3/8 knob, and then I threaded the 1/4 inch end of this into the coupling, and then I covered that over with some Velcro. So that can go just right straight onto the hot shoe of the camera. And then with the Velcro on the back of that, my Tentacle Sync E basically just sits there right on top of the camera, and I don't have to worry about it dangling or falling away or whatever the case may be. And it didn't really cost anything to make those. It was just kit that I had lying around. And lastly, in this side of the bag, we have a tentacled BNC cable, just in case I get on set. Now, I'm running GH5 cameras, so I go straight from the tentacles using a 3.5mm TRS cable into the camera and record audio timecode. But if there's a camera on the set that has the BNC timecode connector in and does file timecode, well, we've got that cable as well, just in case. Okay, so now let's have a look inside of the next part of the bag. So the 4 corners unzip, and then all 4 sides of this bag can be basically opened up, and lots of free space inside the bag for running your cables and getting everything squared up and then closing it back up again. So we'll start over on this side, and I'm going to take that cable off from the Rodelink, and what that is these 3.5mm TRS retractable cables. So that takes all the slack out once it's inside the bag, keeps the wires from getting tangled around anything. We'll take the receiver off, and we'll just set that aside. And of course that is using a Rode VXLR adapter, which is a XLR by 3.5mm TRS for the wireless film kits to get into the MixPre-3. Now on the other side here, I have a 12-inch XLR cable that basically the end is just sitting over here in the corner of the bag, and I can pull that out at any time and then connect that into a boom pole for channel 1 of the MixPre-3. So the channel setup that I use is the wired channel 1 for boom pole, and then channels 2 and 3 are the wireless transmitter receivers, and using the XLR adapters. So let's just, there's a Velcro loop there that I keep that wrapped around so that it doesn't fall down inside the bag. And we'll take that out of channel 1 and just set that aside. Okay, so here comes the tricky part. I'm going to take this all out of the bag. I'll pull a little bit of slack out of that retractable cable. Let's pull this transmitter up out of the hole there, or the receiver, I should say. And now the MixPre-3 is just held in using 2 straps that cross over each other. And now we should be able to pull this up and out of the bag. Retrieve my other little doodad there. Okay, so we can see on this side, so we've got our channel number 2 coming in from the wireless USB-C power direct into that, and the battery sled is left off the back, and that gets me access to the SD card, but I'll show you a little bit more on that in a bit. Now let's just set that aside. Now, when I'm traveling, I keep my Sennheiser MKH416 microphone down inside the bag. There's just enough space left down in there that it basically gets snuggled in there and doesn't get jostled around. It's actually quite safe down in there. It's because I carry this onto the airplane with me, and then the rest of the kit that doesn't have batteries or less expensive kit goes in a checked bag when I'm flying. Let's just set that aside for the time being so it doesn't get damaged. And then in the bottom of the bag, powering the MixPre-3 right now, I have a Anker PowerCore Essential 20,000 milliamp PD. power supply. So it comes with 2 ports on it. There's a USB 3.0 IQ power port, as well as a USB-C power delivery port on that. And that is going to give you 18 watts, which is more than enough to give you full power to the MixPre-3. And then I also have a second backup battery in the bag, and this is a RAV Power model. It's a 22,000 milliamp battery. It's a RP-PB052 is the model number on that. And it comes with 3 power ports on that, all being USB-A. So that's where we come back to this cable that had the 2 USB power connections on it. I can plug 2 of those into 2 of the ports. And now I've got a USB-C power off of this older style battery. And it is enough to give power and turn on the MixPre-3, but because I screwed up and didn't buy the model of this cable that had the built-in pull-up resistors, those pull-up resistors would identify the cable as being capable of supplying the full power to the MixPre-3, and without those pull-up resistors, the MixPre-3 still wants to start up in power reduced mode, which means practically at the end of the day though, only 2 of the 3 XLR connections would be phantom powered. Now, I only have 2 shotgun microphones maximum, so that's really not that big a deal for me. So let's just do a little bit more tear down of the bag here. There's this piece there that the wireless receivers sat in, and there's a little piece of foam that I put on the back of that. There's 2 of those that come with the kit, plus this. And then there's a couple of wedges that would normally sit down in the bottom of the bag here. They would go transverse, and they had a couple of strips of Velcro just to sit here and here on the bag, and that was designed to keep your recorder from sliding back and forth. Now, what I found with those was the Velcro wasn't very sticky to the bottom of the bag, and the pieces would just basically come loose, and they'd just be in the way when I was putting the batteries in the bottom of the bag. So I just took those and got rid of them and set them aside, and instead on the bottom of the bag I put one of these little soft foam things with the Velcro on the back. I take one of those and I stick it all the way over on that one side of the bag, and it actually becomes a bottom rest for the MixPre-3, and it gives it just the right height in the bag by sitting on top of that. Okay. And then of course, as I mentioned, there was the piece here that the wireless receivers would fit on, and they just fit on that with the elastic pouch like that, and then the wire clip, I sent it right over the back side of it like that. The other one I'm recording with, so we'll leave it out for the time being. And then I would put that in there, and then essentially that Velcro just basically lets it affix itself to the side. However, I find that it's a little loose and floppy in there like that, and that's where the second little foam piece came. I actually just put it right in the back side here, inside of the wire bar there like that. And let's just center that up. And I find that just basically keeps that from flopping around so much and actually gives it just the right amount of stiffness without being overly stiff. Okay, carefully now I'm going to have to put all of this stuff back in the bag. Let's just throw that battery down in there first and get it out of the way, off to the side. And then we'll put the MixPre-3 down inside of the bag. And of course these clips, they just come crossed and clip right over the end of the MixPre-3 like that. Now, I got these set such that the MixPre-3 is just slightly off center to the side. And the reason I do that will become apparent as a little later on here as we go through some of the access features in the bag. Okay, so we'll just put that over the other side. Of course, I can't quite see what I'm doing here because I'm not looking. And let's snap that in and then just give that a nice little bit of a tug, snug that up. And you can see that that MixPre-3 is not going anywhere now. It's quite nicely positioned in the bag and no slop, and it's well cushioned on that bottom cushion. And then I just take the ends of these. There's just a little bit of room underneath the Velcro there, and you can just tuck them up underneath of there, and then they're up out of the way and not going to get snagged on anything. Okay, so we'll fish that power cord back down through to the bottom of the bag, and we'll leave that there for the time being, and we'll put our wireless transmitter back inside of here. Now this might be a little trick with all the cables on it, and that's down and through there. Now I find that it's a little tricky getting that elastic band. It wants to catch on the bottom of the receiver. There we go. But once they're in there, there's no reason to touch or move those, and they fit quite nicely. So just run that back down through there, put the battery back in the bottom again. Actually, I'll pull that out through the side for the time being. And then let's hook all that stuff back up. So we have XLR 12-inch cable number 1. That goes into input number 1 in the MixPre-3. I run that up out of this corner, and I run the cable through that little Velcro loop, and that just keeps that XLR plug end from falling back down inside the bag. It's always right there at the ready. Okay, and we'll put input number 3 back in there. 3.5 millimeter cable. Run that up into the wireless receiver, and then pull all that slack back out again. That just sits over there like that. Okay, now we're kind of ready to start closing up the bag, so let's put those, start zipping up those corners, and we can run that excess cable inside. Now we'll put the spare battery block. That'll go in first. It sits on the bottom, out of the way. Sits right in there. Also easy, just enough to open the sides. Just stick that in there like that. And then the other battery bag on the top of that. Battery block, I should say. And then all that spare cable just sits in that end of the bag. We'll close that up. Okay, just like that. Okay, so tentacle sinks. Put those back in the bag, along with my little homemade doodads for mounting on the cameras. Let's go on the other side of the pocket. And of course, all the cables that come with the tentacle sink, they're all in there. And that just folds over nicely, sits down in the bag, along with the power block. I guess if I ever did run out of 2 batteries, I've always got that I could direct power the MixPre-3, but I don't think it would ever come to that. Those 2 batteries probably each have enough power to run the MixPre-3 for a full 24 hours. I've run that for 24 hours, but in standby mode only. I'm sure that if I was actually recording, the time would be a little bit less than that. But it's certainly enough, even in 1 battery, to have enough power for a full day of shooting without having to worry about your battery. And that spare cable for the spare battery block, that just goes down in there. And then I keep the rain cover. I just roll that up nice and tight, throw that in there, bring it out if I ever have to need it. So as we can see, that is pretty nice and compact little setup in the bag there. Let's take the wireless transmitter and the lavalier pouches, and the other one would go down in there, but of course it's on my belt being used right now in order to record this video. And there we have it. And then we'll just take this, let's just get this up out of the way here, take up all the slack, and then send that down in the bottom of the bag. Okay, so we've got everything set up. Of course, most of the controls for the MixPre-3 are right here on the front of the MixPre-3, but there is one control on the side of the MixPre-3, and it's that encoder knob over there with the push button. And to get your fingers in through the corner of the bag, it's a little tricky. It's a little tight and a little hard to do, but what I find is when I'm using this, of course, it'll be mounted on a neck strap or with a harness, and So it's nice and close to the body, and this corner is readily accessible. I just unzip that one corner, stick my fingers in through there, and I can adjust gain up or down as required, or whatever controls require that encoder knob. And then it's not a hindrance just going through the corner of the bag. And that was the reason why I shifted this MixPre-3 just a little bit to that side. So it's just the perfect distance to get my fingers in there without having too much difficulty. The other thing I do when I'm shooting is I will take the handles and I'll just pop them inside like that and zip the bag back up. And that's just less stuff that's on the outside of the bag to get snagged on something while you're recording that would just ruin a shot, and you'd be that guy on set that's causing the retake. So let's not do that. We just keep that stuff tucked down inside the bag, and now we're supported either by the neck strap or the body harness that comes with the MixPre-3. And lastly, with this setup, so I'm just going to turn the bag upside down here, and we have the door on the bottom of the MixPre-3, and it's normally held closed with this little Velcro strap like this, but it's quick and easy to pull that out, and then the door itself is sealed with Velcro. And now I can just basically get in through the bottom of the bag, and by just pushing that pillow back ever so slightly, now I can see directly at the SD card on the bottom of the MixPre-3, and I can just pop that out of there, plug it into whatever device to download that data, and then pop it back in there without having to take the MixPre-3 out of the bag. And that's the main reason for leaving the battery sled off of the MixPre-3 while I have it in the bag and powered off of these battery blocks, is so that I have clean and unfettered access to that SD card. So we'll just close that back up, put the strap back on. And there is one other zippered pocket on this on the outside that if you had stuff in there that you wanted quick access to, but I tend not to use that. We'll just leave that sealed up. So that is a look at the MixPre-3 Orca OR-27 sound bag setup that I use. Please submit some comments. Let me know what you think of my setup. Give it a critique. Does anybody else have a setup that's similar to that? Please let me know in the comments.